I never believed that fear could creep in slowly. I always thought it came from something sudden, loud, or violent. But what happened to me proved that the scariest moments are the quiet ones, the ones you explain away until it's too late. Last winter, I was living alone in a rented house on the outskirts of a small town. It wasn't remote, but it wasn't busy either. Just enough distance between houses that you didn't hear your neighbors, and enough trees around that the nights felt heavier than usual. I worked from home, so I rarely left except for groceries or the gym late at night. My routine was boring, predictable, and honestly comforting. That's probably why it took me so long to notice something was wrong. The first thing was a sound around 2:30 in the morning. I had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on low when I heard a dull thump from the back of the house. It wasn't loud, it wasn't sharp, just enough to register in my half-asleep brain. I muted the TV and listened, but nothing else happened. I checked the back door, saw it was locked, and went to bed without giving it much thought. The next morning, the back door felt strange when I opened it. The deadbolt worked fine, but the handle felt loose, like it had been twisted harder than normal. I remember standing there for a second, trying to recall if it had always been like that. I eventually convinced myself it had, and went on with my day. That night, I went to the gym around 11 p.m., like I usually did. When I got back close to 12:30, I noticed something small but unsettling. My porch light was off. I always leave it on. I stood in my driveway for a moment, staring at the house, trying to remember turning it off. Eventually, I told myself I must have and went inside. Everything looked normal, but I walked through every room anyway, something I had never done before. On Thursday morning, I woke up to my alarm and saw my phone was almost dead. That made no sense. I always charged it overnight. The charging cable was still plugged into my phone, but the adapter was no longer in the wall. I tried to explain it away by telling myself I must have knocked it loose in my sleep, even though my phone was still sitting neatly on the nightstand. That was the moment I started paying attention. That night, instead of going to bed early, I sat on the couch with the TV off, just listening to the house. Around 3 a.m., I heard slow, heavy thumps coming from the back area again. They weren't random. There was a rhythm to them. Step. Pause. Step. I held my breath, waiting for something else to happen, but the sound stopped. I told myself it had to be someone outside, maybe a neighbor or someone walking past. The next day, I found muddy shoe prints near the back door. They weren't clear prints, though. It looked like someone had partially wiped them away before walking inside. My heart dropped into my stomach as I stared at them. I checked the back door again and noticed faint scratch marks around the lock, like someone had been trying to pry it open with something thin. I called a locksmith that afternoon and told him the lock felt unreliable. I didn't mention the footprints. He replaced the lock and assured me everything was secure. That night, I pushed a chair under the back door handle and locked my bedroom door before going to sleep. I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, listening to every small sound the house made. Just before 4 a.m., I woke up to something tapping lightly on my bedroom door. It wasn't knocking. It sounded like fingertips, gently testing the door. I froze, staring at the handle, terrified it would start turning. After about a minute, the tapping stopped. Then I heard soft footsteps moving away. In the morning, the chair was still under the back door handle, but the back door itself was unlocked. The new lock wasn't damaged. It had simply been turned from the inside. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining anything. I called the police. They searched the house and told me there was no sign of forced entry. One of them suggested I might have unlocked the door myself without remembering. I nodded, but I knew that wasn't true. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with all the lights on and a knife in front of me. Around 2 a.m., I heard something from the basement. The basement door was slightly open. I was sure I had closed it earlier. I walked toward it slowly and peeked through the crack. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw the outline of someone standing there, perfectly still. I slammed the door shut and ran out of the house barefoot, calling 911 from my car. When the police arrived, they went inside while I waited. A few minutes later, they brought a man out in handcuffs. He was barefoot, wearing dark clothes, and he didn't look at me even once. Inside the basement, they found where he had been living. Food wrappers, bottled water, old insulation laid out like a bed, and a phone charger plugged into the wall. He had been staying there for weeks. Days later, while scrolling through my phone, I found something that still makes me sick. A photo taken at 3:11 a.m. It was me, asleep in my bed. I deleted it immediately. I moved out shortly after. I lock my doors twice now. I sleep lightly. And I never ignore small things anymore. Because sometimes the danger isn't outside your house. Sometimes it's already inside. I thought leaving that house would end everything. I really believed distance would be enough. New place, new routine, new start. But some experiences don't stay behind when you move. They follow you quietly, waiting for the right moment to remind you they never really ended. A month after I moved out, I settled into a small apartment closer to the city. It was on the 3rd floor of a secure building, with cameras in the lobby and key fob access at the front door. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. I slept better. I stopped checking locks repeatedly. Life slowly returned to normal. Then my phone started acting strange. It began with battery drain. I'd go to sleep with my phone fully charged and wake up to it barely alive. At first, I blamed old cables or background apps. But one morning, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. My phone's screen time showed activity between 2 and 4 a.m. Apps I never used were opened. The camera app had been accessed. I told myself it had to be a glitch. A few nights later, I woke up suddenly, the same way I had in the house, with that familiar pressure in my chest. The room was dark and silent. I reached for my phone to check the time and realized it wasn't on my nightstand. I found it on my desk across the room, face down. I knew I hadn't left it there. I sat up slowly, scanning the apartment. The front door was locked. The windows were closed. Everything looked normal. Still, I didn't go back to sleep. I waited for morning with the lights on. The next evening, when I got home from work, my doormat was missing. It wasn't expensive or unique, just a plain brown mat. But I knew it was there when I left that morning. I checked the hallway, thinking maybe a neighbor moved it accidentally. It was gone. That night, I found it folded neatly against the wall inside my apartment, just behind the front door. I stood there staring at it for a long time, trying to make sense of how it got there. After that, small things started changing. Cabinet doors left slightly open. The shower curtain pulled back when I always closed it. Once, I found the bathroom mirror wiped clean, except for a single handprint at the top corner, too high to be mine. I installed a camera in my living room the next day. The first 2 nights, nothing happened. I almost felt embarrassed for overreacting. On the 3rd night, around 3:12 a.m., the camera sent a motion alert. My heart raced as I opened the app. At first, I didn't see anything. The room looked empty. Then I noticed the timestamp. The camera was recording, but the footage showed static for exactly 11 minutes. When the image returned, my couch cushions were slightly indented, as if someone had just stood up. The next morning, I checked the front desk for security footage. The guard told me no one had entered my apartment floor overnight. No key fob access. No door alarms triggered. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom. Around 2:40 a.m., I heard it again. Fingertips brushing softly across wood. This time, it wasn't my bedroom door. It was coming from inside the closet. I stared at the closet door, frozen, watching the handle slowly tilt downward before stopping. I didn't scream. I didn't move. After a long moment, the handle returned to its original position. The next day, I stayed with a friend. When I returned to my apartment 2 days later with her, everything looked untouched. But on my bed, centered perfectly on the pillow, was my phone. On the screen was a single photo. It was the hallway of my old house, taken at night. I moved out of that apartment the same week. I changed my number. I deleted my accounts. I stopped living alone. And sometimes, when my phone screen lights up for no reason in the middle of the night, I still wonder whether moving ever really matters. Because some things don't need keys to get inside. They already know you.